This podcast may contain discussions of graphic violence, unsettling themes, supernatural phenomena, and other topics that some listeners may find disturbing or triggering. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. The opinions expressed are simply those of the individual hosts and do not represent the profession of psychology or constitute professional advice.
Welcome back to the Secret Passage podcast. Shannon, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I was just thinking about how we used to start by saying our names. And I was like, thank God we don't have to do that anymore because I feel like it's a universally awkward experience. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
because we know each other, and then presumably anybody who is listening either knows our names already or they just want to hear what we're saying.
I just hate having to introduce myself. I'm Shannon Rogers.
Yeah.
Saying your
Yeah.
own name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Did you, Shannon, go down any interesting secret passages this week?
I did. This week it was one of my favorite holidays, April Fools.
I didn't know that. Oh, well, you played like the best, craziest joke on Tim.
Yes, poor Tim. So Tim's like, I can't believe you consider April Fool's a holiday. So one time I got him really good. I called him at work and I was like, Tim, don't freak out. Our house has been broken into. He's all, what? And it was the funniest thing. I torture him. So this year I did there's this like alien simulation you can look up on YouTube where you can put it on your TV and it looks like it's an emergency broadcast system announcement that these, orbs are, or these cylindrical objects are coming to Earth, and it's like a whole alien thing. I got Tim really good with it. He believed it. He was like, I was just sitting there thinking, I guess this is how it ends.
It was funny because you sent me the recording and he's like, What? What? And you're like, I don't know. I turned it on NBC. I don't know. And he's like, what? What?
I love it when he's all, you're watching something. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Oh, poor guy.
That's so funny.
How about you?
Dude, okay. So my secret passage happened before we started recording. It's why I was like 11:30. Because you were, we'll do like, we're doing 11. And then you'll send me a text, be like, is 11:15 okay? I'm like, yes. And you're like, 11:20. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, 11:30. So this happens once in a while. I'm like in my room. So the house is a fucking disaster. This past week, there has been so much just going on
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, usually I'll do like a Sunday reset and everyone gets on chores and all that kind of stuff. But it's usually not that bad, like to the point where we can just focus on like cleaning baseboards or like a deep clean mop or something. But every dish we have was in the sink.
Mm.
And so earlier this morning, I was like, I'm going to get started early, and laundry, all that. So I'm in my room and all of a sudden, so it's like 10 minutes before we were supposed to get on. And all of a sudden, I started to feel the onset of a panic attack.
Oh.
I was like, what the fuck? It's been a while. So for me, what'll happen is like I'll feel it in my chest, and then I'll get like that weird aura where I feel like super panicky, but also it feels almost like a health issue, like I'm about to have a heart attack or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have had that second cup of coffee. But usually 2 cups of coffee, and it's the same like brand and amount and all that of coffee that I have all the time. So I was like, oh no, this is like panic attack. So I have different ways that I handle it. So one of the ways is I need to go outside and stand in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sometimes is all it takes. So I go in the backyard and I'm like, but I need to be doing something to kind of redirect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was like, Oh yeah, on my list of duties for Sunday, I need to go pick up dog poop in the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I'm gonna go pick up dog poop. And I'm out there
That'll
and
ground
it's
you.
like this
Yeah.
peaceful, I could feel like the warm sun like on the back of my neck, and I'm like just out there with like the little bags, little dog poop bags, just like picking up poop. And like we have the fountain in the backyard, so it's that tranquil sound of water. And I just imagined like, that kind of Japanese flute music and like the
Uh-huh.
running water as I'm picking up shit. But it worked.
That's so great. That's like a really good strategy.
It's for years and years and years I've dealt with like an anxiety disorder and OCD and stuff, and I'm
Hmm.
on medication for it. But I had to find like tricks.
Hmm.
And that's the benefit also of cognitive therapy is it's like how, okay, so like there's this anxiety. I'm not even interested in why I have it. I'm
Yeah.
interested in how I deal with it because I have to live my life.
Yep.
And there's different things I've done, like aromatherapy. I'll like carry around, I remember I used to carry around peppermint oil
Mm.
because it just, the strong smell of it, it almost like it interrupts
Mm-hmm.
kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the tapping.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, sunshine, which I think there's even science behind like getting sunshine because our house is dark inside.
This is so cool because I feel like your secret passage totally ties in to like this case that we're talking about today because you can see like how much psychological flexibility you have and how you're able to sort of attend to your experience even though it's super intense and there's like space between you and it and you're able to make moves that are effective and help you. You know what I mean? And like a
Yeah.
lot of people can't do that, especially people in this case.
Oh, well, I can't even. Oh, yeah. Okay. So before we get started, guys, massive, massive, massive trigger warning. Massive trigger warning. Child abuse, child murder.
Failed systems.
Yeah. Failed governmental systems. If that's triggering for
Good
you,
God. Yeah.
then leave the country. No, but that's just letting you guys know the Gabriel Fernandez case is horrifying. There's just really no other way to describe it. But that
Ooh,
is what we're talking about today.
I have a correction to make for last time.
Oh, what was it? What is it?
So, I told a story about my friend Michael Baker, who I basically positioned Yahoo Sports as like this righteous organization that cares about gambling and has like a mechanism built in to prevent people who have gambling addictions from gambling. It's not true. So
Oh, shit.
what happened was he was screwing around and he just was like messing around on the site and there is an option to self-report if you have an addiction and you can self-report and say I'm spending too much money, I'm spending too much time, and once you report to them then they ban you for a while, but that's it. They're not like out there trying to, you know.
How about that? How about if you have a problem with gambling, you can self-report.
Exactly, who's going to do that?
Yeah, I have that much self-awareness and self-control to at least let you know so that you can make me stop doing the thing that I'm addicted to.
Yeah. I guess you'd have to probably people in recovery use it, but like, yeah, I know, isn't it funny?
Yeah, that's well, we did our job.
Right.
Did you though? Did you? Like the social workers in the Gabriel Fernandez case. We did our
Ugh.
job. Yeah? Yeah, well, it doesn't seem like you did.
No. Oh my God. Okay. Ugh.
Yeah,
Should you should you
let's get
start
in.
the
We
journey?
we warned you. We warned you. This what we are going to be discussing is really awful, but it's important and it's necessary to talk about this and to keep talking about it until we see more change in children's protections. So a quick summary. Gabriel Fernandez was an 8-year-old boy from Palmdale, California, who was systematically abused and ultimately murdered by his mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend, Isaro Aguirre, in 2013. So in 2013, when Gabriel was 7 and some change, he went to live with his biological mother. He had been living with his uncles and then his grandparents. And Pearl had originally, given birth to Gabriel, but did not want to have anything to do with him, and actually left him at the hospital for her uncles to go pick him up because they wanted to raise him. And so from the time he was a little baby till about 7 years old, he was with his uncles and his grandparents. And then Pearl decided she wanted custody of Gabriel again. There was nothing that came up that there was any kind of official adoption. This was just sort of taking Gabriel and raising him, and then giving him to the grandparents came and got him. They're raising him. There was nothing to really point to Gabriel being in the legal custody of any of these other people. So Pearl was able to just come in and take him.
So he was with his uncles till he was 4, and then the
Okay.
grandparents decided to take him because they didn't want him to be raised by gay uncles.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's 4 years old, and they're like, you know what? This gay thing isn't working for us.
Yeah, and then Pearl went to get him to take him to a barbecue and just never brought him home.
And they never pursued it,
Right.
which is crazy. Pearl, so the idea is, or the thought is, I don't know if it was ever like proven, but it tracks, that Pearl wanted Gabriel for the money that she would get from the state by having an extra child. She already had 2 children. So that is the theory. And so then pretty quickly, this is 2013 now, pretty quickly, Gabriel's abuse began really intensely right away. In May 22nd, Gabriel died after severe and prolonged physical and mental abuse. And then in June 2013, Pearl Fernandez and Isaro Igeri, so Isaro was her boyfriend that also participated in the abuse, they were arrested. And then from about 2014, 2015, investigation and legal proceedings were happening. And then in 2018, they were both convicted of murder in the first degree, and with special circumstances, Asaro was sentenced to death. Pearl, after learning of Asaro's fate, wanted to plea out to avoid the same fate. So she was sentenced to a life in prison without the possibility of parole. So yeah, some of the abuse details are just fucking grotesque. Gabriel was repeatedly tortured, beaten. He was shot with a BB gun in his genitals, in his face, beaten with a bat, his teeth knocked out. Cigarettes were put out on different parts of his body. Apparently, Pearl had heard from someone that Gabriel might have been sexually molested by a man during the time that he was living, not with Pearl. And Pearl's reaction to that was to then decide, well, that means that Gabriel is gay, even though he was a little kid who, if indeed he had been sexually molested, then, well, that was traumatic. And her reaction was to decide that that meant Gabriel was gay, and to call him all kinds of homophobic slurs, and then to force him to wear girls' clothing in their apartment, and beat him for being gay. He was severely malnourished, was only allowed to eat spoiled and rotten food, was forced to eat cat feces and cat litter. During his autopsy, his stomach contents only contained bits of litter. And yeah, so he was forced to sleep in a tiny cabinet with a sock in his mouth. And it should be noted as well that his brother and sister were not, I'm not going to say not abused, because what they had to watch Gabriel go through is abuse. But also Pearl had she had a history with the Children's Protective Services with, I think it's neglect with
Yeah,
the
I
other
think,
two.
Yeah, I don't know the details, but they definitely had an open case on her for a really long time before this happened.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but Gabriel was the focus of her ire and Isaro Aguirre's as well. So that's the background of the case. I'm trying to think about kind of what our focus is. I think we're less interested in going over every minute detail of the case because it's done very, very well in the documentary on Netflix called The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. And also there's a podcast which is really, really good. It's really comprehensive that it works great in tandem with the Netflix documentary.
It's called Murder in America, and it's episode 99, The
Yes,
Torture
Murder in
and
America,
Murder.
episode 99.
Yeah, the torture and murder of 8-year-old Gabriel Fernandez. Yeah.
Yeah, they do an excellent, excellent job of just detailing the case. And also, you hear 911 calls, some of the trial, and all of that. But I think I remember when this case happened, and I heard about it, I read about it, and I read some of the details, and I couldn't understand how. You hear about cases where a child is killed, or they're abused and then eventually killed. This really, what is especially difficult about this case is the cruelty towards him, of humiliating him, degrading him, physically torturing him, and making a point of showing, of course, favoritism to his siblings. So he's seeing that he's the only one that's being hurt. They had a bedroom and beds and toys, and he had a cabinet.
It's horrible. And I remember it like sent shockwaves through the like social work and psychotherapy community. At that time, I think I was working in community mental health. And so I think we all were sort of stunned by the lack of response, or the terrible response from law enforcement, but also the social workers, and then the
The
unique
teachers.
and the teacher. The unique thing about it for us, the unique thing about it, period, is that it's the first time you've ever seen social workers actually charged with
Yes,
something.
that was
And
it was unprecedented.
yeah, and knowing this, how really truly jacked up the system is, I'm sure I wasn't a social worker at the time, but it struck fear in me. Like, the system is super dysfunctional. And to think that you'd be vulnerable to that kind of criminal charge as a result of someone sort of dying on your caseload, I think really scared people. But I mean, yeah. So, I mean, that's just one element of it. But we can get into more detail about like what actually happened. But yeah, that was the part that was so. It's like the abuse, like you were saying, the degree, and coupled with that people reported this like multiple times, and that nothing, and cops went out to the house multiple times, and social workers went out to the house multiple times, and he was never removed from the home.
That is ultimately the things that there were a few things that stood out to me. One is, initially when I heard about this, in my mind, I pictured a child who was isolated from society, right?
Yeah.
He's like kept as a prisoner in the house. And then I find out that no, he was going to school. People saw him.
They
He
thought,
was walking around covered in with black eyes, cigarette burns, and
yes.
bruises. He looked like he just, finished fucking 5 rounds of fucking boxing. Like just his face. And there's pictures taken, during school events.
Yeah.
And you see him with fucking black, like and blue, just like healing bruises, and his hair is all crazy, like he had been shaved, like he had a weird kind of
Mohawk with like shave marks. It was all like wonky. Yeah.
yeah, that's like you could tell someone just went at him just to hurt him. And and then on top of that, so not only is he going to school looking like that, I
And
would
getting
be
progressively
terrified.
worse.
And it's getting worse, and then there would be like these days, like these long, like 2 week long absences because Pearl and Asara want to keep him home to make sure that people don't see how bad it is, even though he'd go to school, then you'd see the pictures where children were gasping when he'd walk into the classroom. And then add to that, he was asking for help. He was
Directly.
asking for help from his teacher.
And telling people that his
Yeah,
parents were
this is
abusing
what's
him.
happening to me. Telling the kids. And nothing was done. I mean, the teacher, she's interviewed in the documentary, and she talks about how Gabriel tells her, like, is it normal? Is it normal to get hit with a belt? And she goes, well, that's some parents do that to discipline. And he goes, oh, is it normal to get hit with the metal part of the belt? And that's when I don't know what she did first. If she did, as a mandated reporter, she made the call to social services, but she did ask the principal to come and look at him, and the principal refused.
He said that
Principal,
we don't investigate.
we only report.
So that's the training we get to. Like as therapists, it's like you don't have to investigate, but like you can ask questions and you can look at a body. That's not investigating. That's like
Well, how
looking
about
at
when
what's right in
somebody?
front of your eyes.
Yeah, there's a fucking kid that got the shit beat out of him, and you're like, we don't investigate. I don't have to investigate.
It's right there.
It's right here, and he's saying his mother and stepfather did this to him.
Oh my God, I'm so enraged. Like yesterday, I was listening to, I feel sick talking about it. And I know I don't want to, I feel like it's obvious, like any sane person would feel this way.
Sure.
But it's this bizarre experience engaging with this material all week. I went through all of if you think about trauma, like I went through all of these stages, like of being completely numb, and then of being sick, and then of being angry, and then of being, wanting to like look away. It's like the fact that people were so persistent. His family reported it 3 times. The teacher reported it more than once, and she knew the social worker's phone number. Anyway, but yes, okay. So we have established that there was a massive failure. All right, where were we? Where were we at?
Just talking about how the thing that was so
Yeah.
fucking galling was that he wasn't, in fact, like just hidden away from society, like in an attic,
And they
being
got more
beaten.
brazen about it as time went along, and there were no
Which was a testament to
consequences.
their absolute fucking stupidity.
Oh my God, Pearl. So here's my thing. And not to toot my own horn. I mean, I was a beginning therapist once, and I was very anxious and totally afraid. But if I would have, I mean, the like lack of instinct that this person had, who was the social worker, you look at Pearl's face and you're like, this person is not playing with a full deck here. Like,
Oh no, Pearl was terrifying looking. Like that's where I went to. I'm like, if I was Stephanie Rodriguez, the social worker, and I knock on that door and Pearl fucking answers with
you're
her
like,
crazy eyeliner, and she looks spooky and she looks aggressive.
she looks aggressive and dead-eyed. Like,
Yeah.
like there
And
is some,
probably was on meth,
yeah.
right? She had a massive meth problem.
I mean, you look at this is the thing. I think there is a bit of training out of your instincts sometimes in a compassion-focused, family reunification geared system. Like you look at people as though they are they're poor and they are a victim of society, and you have empathy for them and they're just struggling, and you're there to support them, and you want to keep the family together. And I think it trains you out of a very of a more critical eye. I mean, like, I can see how through a certain lens you would just, I don't know. I have no idea what the social worker was thinking, but
I don't either, but so like, okay, let's
yeah.
imagine for a second that, well, aside from the fact that Stephanie had between 30 and 38 cases that she was
Yes.
working, right?
I
So,
read that at one point, I know somebody who worked for DCFS at this
yeah,
time. I read somewhere that at one point they had maybe upwards of 50.
which is insane. And then you think about out of that the 50, there's some that are people weaponizing CPS, and it's a nothing burger. Just like in the documentary, when they go with the social worker and she goes to someone's house and it turns out that the woman was basically, it was a pissed off ex, right?
Yes, people using it to
Yeah, that happens and stuff. So like there's that. Then there's some maybe more mild things, and then there's some downright scary abuse things. So maybe Stephanie was juggling so much, and then so she sees Pearl, and so Pearl, who looks terrifying, like in every fucking picture in the documentary, she just looks scary.
I mean, she looks like, yeah, resting homicidal face.
Yeah, her resting facial expression is angry.
Like, I will kill you.
Yes. And so, okay, let's say she answers the door and Stephanie's like, whatever. Like some people, like I'm dealing with people that look maybe even scarier than this. But then when she's saying, Gabriel apparently told his teacher or something like that, that you hit him with a bat or you shot him with the BB gun. Pearl's response is, he's lying. He's a liar. If
Yeah.
somebody said that to me, I'd be like, that's like a weird response.
I mean, first order of business as a social worker,
Can
or
I see the child?
well, also like a perpetrator will probably lie to you about whether they're perpetrating.
Right.
Like, yeah. She's
Also,
so naive. I think that's what people said about her, that she seemed naive and gullible. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm having a hard time not just looking at everyone in this situation as a coward, a lazy coward,
yeah,
basically.
yeah,
But like I know there are a lot of like think about the punishers in that situation that exist versus like the only thing I could connect to in putting myself in her position was, if I was to go up against this mother, like what would it take? It would take a lot of courage because I'd be facing all this anxiety about her anger, about what she might do to me. The only thing I could find that would be like a reinforcing thing about having to go into that house and having to face both Asaro and her is like, I could potentially save a kid. And I
yeah,
hope that social workers like can connect to that and do their job. But it's almost like I'm like, was she scared of her? Did she not? There's a protocol. Like she just
right,
didn't follow the protocol. Like, is it a
yeah,
training issue? People can hide their caseload from their supervisors in conditions like this because your supervisor has like 6 or 7 supervisees, and all those 6 and 7 supervisees have like 30 cases. So you could go to supervision. I think they were getting like, let me see how much they were getting, like 1 hour of supervision. Oh, was it for 15 clients?
oh my gosh.
Let me see what it is. They changed it after this case, but I have it in my notes. Oh yeah, 15 to 1. So they had 1 hour of supervision for each 15 cases. Now I think it's like 1 in 5. But 1 hour is like hardly enough time to bring to your supervisor probably all of the sort of red alert cases. But yeah, yeah. God, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it could also be Stephanie tried, said, "Hey,
Yeah.
Pearl, can I see Gabriel? He's not here." Okay. And then there's that need to keep moving along, not comprehending how bad it could possibly be. wanting to. I mean, it could be being overworked, overwhelmed.
Not well
Pearl
trained.
not well trained. Pearl sort of resisting. Like in the example they gave in the Netflix documentary, they show this social worker who's just great. She's got great. Really, you can tell she's just good with people. She's got her system down. She also had an officer with her.
Yeah, she was confident. She clearly knew the ropes. She clearly knew the protocols. And when you're new, you don't, and I don't know what their training is like. It's probably abysmal, like most trainings. But when you're new, that's the thing is like you have to ask for help. You have to talk to your colleagues. You have to have someone go with you. If she would have known her own limits, she could have told her supervisor, I can't do this. I need somebody else to do this for me, whatever the case. I don't know. It's just
Yeah, the
stuff.
heart. There's not enough information
Yeah.
about Stephanie specifically. She wasn't interviewed in the documentary. Probably didn't want to be. Don't blame her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't know how her like knock at the door and that whole interaction went down. But in the documentary with the other social worker that they they follow as she goes to follow up on a report, the woman that answers the door is incredibly she's really
Kind.
agreeable. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, come in. She's like, what the fuck? Yeah, no,
And
please, yeah. Look at the baby. Look at my fridge. Turn on my water. Do whatever you need to do. Obviously, Pearl wasn't that. That was not her. She never did that. She was always putting up a resistance or not answering the door. At one point, she lied and said that Gabriel had moved to Texas with relatives
that was to the cop. Yeah, that
to the cop.
the school officer person who came by. Yeah.
Right.
That was yeah, yeah, yeah.
So she was not ever going to be forthcoming. So maybe with Stephanie, she's by herself. Pearl's saying, no, he's not here. That was a lie. And all that. And who knows? Maybe Stephanie was just like, I am fucking exhausted. I'm overwhelmed. I'm gonna assume that, Pearl's telling the truth, even though she's terrifying. It's there's also, I think, a callousness that comes over you when you're doing a job that confronts you with so much kind of torment and just like it's you're not by and large you're not dealing with happy people.
Yeah.
It's got to weigh on you. And again, this isn't to excuse what happened. What happened should have never happened, and what happens still to this day should never happen when it comes to kids. But it's terrifying that there is such a need.
Yeah, there's so many cases. I
There
mean,
are so many cases. That's incredibly depressing.
it's very depressing. And I mean, on top of that though, it's like it's I mean, well, it's think about bureaucracy, right? Like how slow it is to adjust to anything. But if you have the situation where so they're overwhelmed, they're overworked, the processes for change are probably so insanely layered. Like every time they want to do something, they have to probably form a committee and have like 10,000 meetings. But the
Right.
fact that, I mean, listen to all the things that went wrong with this, okay? So
Okay.
failure to act on multiple abuse reports. There were at least 6 documented allegations of abuse or neglect involving Pearl for over a decade. And they were reports from family members, reports from teachers, reports from the security guard. Um, there were inadequate investigations. They did not interview him alone, ever, that I know of. They had all of these escalating wounds and his teacher reporting all these multiple injuries. And she followed up with the social worker multiple times. Nothing happened, ignoring the prior history of Pearl's neglect and missing signs of physical abuse all over his body. You're supposed to fill out they showed in the case notes, there's a drawing of a body. And when you go meet with the family, you're supposed to look at the child's body and mark down their injuries. And then the protocol is you're supposed to send them to a third party, like a doctor, to have them evaluated. And that never happened. And then the woman who was working on family reunification with the family, the older woman with the gray hair.
Patricia Clement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She, like my descriptors.
Yeah.
The old woman with the gray hair. She seemed like a real...
She was just a self-pitying slob.
Oh my God! They called her, one of her coworkers. I thought this was so amazing. The coworkers referred to her as profane.
Yes.
Which I think is so funny. And she was a nun. She was formerly a nun. So she improperly closed the case.
And then she backdated it.
Yes. So then they did not follow up with referrals, didn't take him to a third party, and then none of these supervisors caught any of it, which honestly, you can totally hide your cases from your supervisor, but they should have some process where the files are being reviewed, or at least some process. Look at me. I'm after the fact, if I was in this situation, I imagine the system would have gotten to me too, and I would have missed things. But not coordinating with other agencies, like not coordinating with law enforcement, not getting an officer to go with her. And then they had like this, like you were saying, the systemic overload, not enough resources. And then, anyway, just like a ton of missed opportunities for removing him from the home. I don't know how many, I couldn't count, but it sounded like at least 6 times people went out to that house. More than that with the family reunification woman.
And then the ridiculous fucking cop who went by really in the middle of the night, and you just know when he was there, and Asaro answers the door and he's talking to Asaro, and oh yeah, no, Gabriel's asleep. No, Gabriel's a liar. The lying thing again. And the cop's like, okay, well, I can come by in the morning and like, scare him, like tell him, hey, you got to stop lying or else you're going to get arrested. And you just know that when Asaro is talking to the cop and it's like, in the middle of the night, you know that Gabriel has a fucking sock in his mouth and he's in the cabinet.
I know. Just thinking of all the times that he thinks he's going to get help and he doesn't. And thinking of him, he tried so hard. Like, so hard. He, walking past the security guard in the welfare office, he made sure the security guard
saw his injuries,
his bruises, and looked at the security guard with his side eye, like, help me.
Yeah.
And
then his teacher, hey, can you call the social worker again?
Honestly, it's just mind-boggling.
It's insane. Like it is. This is a case of a kid trying to save his own life over and over and over again, and is failed by every adult in a position of power to save him. And then I think about when the cop comes back to like scare Gabriel and put him in the back of the cop car and be like, see, you if you keep lying, you're going to go to jail. You just know that Gabriel had fucking bruises on him.
Good God.
Yeah, I mean, the security guard was horrified. Like his hair was standing up on the back of his neck. He's looking at this boy going, this boy is and this is a security guard, right? He's not a police officer. He's a security guard. And he is seeing he can tell it's cigarette burns. He can tell the bruises.
Can we just talk about the unsung hero of this whole thing? Arturo
He is the
Miranda.
MVP.
He is, let's say his full name, Arturo Miranda Martinez. You are a hero. I mean, he tried.
He tried everything.
And the cops, I mean, that's the thing though. You have to follow up. And usually they ask you when you make a call like this. I know because I am the Karen of Fruitvale and I'm always calling the cops on people. I mean, for good reason. But they'll usually ask you, do you want to call back after?
Yeah.
And that's the part that gets me. It's like, I think people just think that you can call this call and be like, I'm going to report some child abuse, and then not take it, not push, like you would hope that if a teacher talked to a social worker and kept seeing the kid come back to class with more and more and more wounds, that person would just be like, I mean, maybe it's my inner Karen, but like, I would be like, let me speak to your supervisor, please. This is not okay. Um,
Yeah.
and his family, like he went to stay with his Pearl's sister, I guess his aunt. She's really young,
Yeah.
and he looked so bad that she took photographs of him, and she would go back home with him to stay the night so that he wouldn't get abused. Yet, I mean, they called about it and nothing was done about it, and I'm just like, why didn't anyone push this up the chain? And I know people have like issues with interacting with systems, like with law enforcement, and with people don't feel entitled to do that sometimes or know it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. What I think about, it's interesting because this morning at church, we were, my pastor, shout out to Pastor Jim Cruz at Atmosphere Church in
Pastor
Westlake.
Jim.
He's awesome. He's so awesome. But he's, talking about the idea of love your neighbor and what that means. It's not, it can mean, sure, literally love your neighbor, but it's usually just anyone that is hurting, you help. So he
Mm-hmm.
goes, if someone, someone is hurting you, you help, you do what you can. Sometimes that means doing something that is really, really hard. He goes, it can be simple. It can be like, hey, you look sad. Can I, do you want to talk about it? Or you see someone is hungry and you feed them. Or he's always buying, people food, right?
Mm.
Which is, it seems like a small gesture. Sometimes it's the most important thing that happened to that person that day. But I think about Gabriel in the situation, and uh I have been humbled many, many, many times in my life, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm not saying that I would be the person that would be willing to lose my job to save a child's life. I hope I would be, right? I
I
hope.
mean, yeah, I know. I
I
know.
hope I would be,
But I've been
but
cowardly as hell before when there's like a pressure like that or a
yeah.
conflict or yeah.
This I always go back to the original thing. I said this in one of our earlier episodes. Like we all want to believe that we would be the hero. We all want to believe that we would be the person. Um,
Who would keep Anne Frank hidden in our basement?
exactly. We all want to believe that we would be that family that hid Anne Frank's family in our attic, risking our own lives to do what is right. We want to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of us are. By and large, most people will be following orders. By, by and large, the most part are going to do what they can to keep themselves safe. And I'm not saying that that is stupid or wrong, because self-preservation matters to a degree. Uh, but in this case, I think about the
You're-
teacher who could have maybe said to the principal, fuck off. This kid is going to die if
I
we
w-
don't do something, if I don't do something. But I don't know her. I don't know what her circumstances are. I don't know what her home life is like. I don't know if she's, living paycheck to paycheck and also taking care of a lot of people. Like I don't know her at
the
all.
crazy thing about it is that it's all confidential. Like she could have called a million times, and if they would, a social worker would lose their job if they let the family know who reported. And if you say you want
Right.
to make a confidential report, she didn't even need the principal. But I totally get it, like the power
But she
differential.
did keep calling.
Yeah, she didn't say though, like nothing's happening. I need to talk to your supervisor. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think that's the part where I'm just like why do we settle for that if you're not seeing results? Like if you got some weird charge on your phone bill, you'd probably call and be like, "Hello." Um, like it just makes no sense to me that
At a certain
yeah.
point, though, when I think about the condition he was showing up in
Yeah.
to school, and there's documentation, there's pictures
Yep.
of him from school, and if a kid is showing up looking like that, and then
Yeah.
telling me I keep getting beaten up and shot in the face with the BB gun,
I would take him to the sheriff's department
I
myself.
would I would not be, I don't know that I would want him to leave my classroom
I
because
wouldn't.
he might die.
Think
And
about that.
that's the thing. And again, when I say that, I'm not saying because if I had been that teacher at that elementary school, I would have done everything. I'm not saying that. And I can't imagine being in that position. I do just wonder, I wonder sometimes, like, that fear is paralyzing.
Well, so, yeah, that just speaks, it totally speaks to a lack of coordination. Like, you should be working hand in hand with social workers, teachers, law enforcement. They do it for truancy, they do it for a lot of other things. Like, you should be invited and your concerns should be taken seriously. And above just some rando off the street, because you see that kid every day. And that's where it's like the most epic failure. Like, this is a trusted member of the community who sees that child every day. And you're not taking her concerns seriously enough to have that kid evaluated.
Yeah.
It's just wild. I think that, I mean, that's why they ended up getting charged. I think the DA was just like, this is complete bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
these people are actually culpable for their inaction. And I mean, if you think about the trauma, that whole like victim, perpetrator, bystander dynamic, the bystanders were taking action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a game of hot potato. Like it's
Yeah.
like here, now it's in your hands. Now it's in your hands. Yeah, it just keeps passing the buck, passing the buck, passing the buck, and believing, that when you call social services, that they're gonna do their job.
Yeah.
You know,
We'll take you seriously. They'll,
yeah. If you're a mandated reporter, you make the call. He keeps coming to school looking like that. I'm sure it was just and I have so much sympathy for that teacher because she did the impact statement at trial, and she is haunted,
ah.
and will be forever.
And that's, she's not, in a way, these people who reported are, they're also victims. Like, they have to live with that whole, they have to live with what happened. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they have to have questions. Like, I know I would. There have been situations in my life where I could have stepped up more. And I sort of live with, like, oh, regret
Yeah.
about not doing that. And, she did everything she was supposed to do. She didn't
Yeah.
necessarily drop the ball. But, and I know you at school, I don't know what neighborhood his school was in, but sometimes schools, it's just a chaotic environment, and you have all these
Yeah.
kids in your class, and you really can't give the
Well, he
individual.
was number 28.
Oh yeah,
That's a lot of kids. And I mean, if 28 kids, if there were only 28 kids, that's a lot of kids. And I get the impression that there's probably more.
honestly, if I see some kid eating alone at lunch, like, it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how I would have. I just know I think I probably would have offered to adopt him myself or something. I don't, I can't imagine seeing a kid show up in that condition and being okay with him going home. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no.
easy to say when you're not in the situation, but
No, I know. And yeah, it's interesting because so what one of the things I know this is another big topic of conversation around this case that you and I have had is the perpetrators, right? We know that Pearl was I think it's worth noting that she never wanted to have Gabriel. She wanted to have an abortion. And regardless of where anyone stands on the issue of abortion, the bottom line is that she didn't want him, and her parents encouraged her to go ahead and have the baby. But I'm like, at that point, that that someone should have arranged for an adoption, like an actual legal adoption, a
Yeah.
closed adoption, right?
The uncles really wanted that baby, huh?
They did, but like we discussed, they never went through legal channels to adopt him,
Yep.
and that could have saved him from also the grandparents that suddenly decided that Gabriel shouldn't be raised by homosexuals. Like all of a sudden he's 4 years old, and it's like, you know what? You guys are gay. We
Nope.
don't want you raising him. But then they just let him go back to Pearl.
I know.
I'm mad at his family, and I understand that they probably are dealing with their own feelings of guilt around Gabriel, but no one thought about the trauma of being taken from his uncles that were basically his fathers, right? He's 4 years old. He's already bonded with them,
Yeah, people
and
are
they're
just treating
like
him like an object.
an object, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then when Pearl comes to take him to the barbecue, like there's no follow up. Hey, bring him back here. You didn't want him.
That's that really I says something I think about like what you were saying earlier, right? Like fear. Like like why the teacher might not she might be afraid she'd lose her job, why
Yeah,
the social worker. I feel like I wonder if her family was afraid of her and felt they had no claim to him because they had no legal claim. But I mean, still, it's like fear, letting fear stop us in this way has consequences.
yeah, huge consequences, and I'm sure they saw that, you know.
Yeah.
But we know that Pearl never wanted him,
Yeah.
and that when after she had given birth, her she messaged the uncles, and it was like, well, come get him. He's getting on my nerves already.
Ugh.
That she didn't want him, but then she knew that she could collect money from welfare by having him. So Pearl's backstory is tragic. Pearl did not have it easy. I think that's it's worth mentioning if we want to sort of understand maybe how something like this happens.
Yeah.
We've already discussed like the systemic failure, but how does one become a monster who tortures and murders a child to death?
Yeah.
And so Pearl has diminished intellectual capacities. She's you know I think she in a psych test they mentioned that. I think that's public information, right? That she has
She's not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
right, like she is actually what's the proper
Oh, she
word?
has like oh, what's it called? Well, I think diminished intellectual capacity is
That's enough. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. She
Yeah.
she she was extremely low IQ, right?
Hmm.
And add to that, she dealt with her own trauma. She was gang raped in her as a young girl, and on top of that, also had a massive drug problem. Meth being her drug of choice,
I think she started using various substances at like age 9.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder about what was going on in the grandparents' home. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
feel in a lot of ways, I'm like, Gabriel never stood a fucking chance, man.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that he would have ended up tortured, because I don't know. I don't know what was going on with Pearl at home exactly. And then I'm also curious about if Gabriel was in fact sexually molested, where it's a thing we don't know if that's true.
Oh, someone called her and said that one of the uncles did it, I thought.
Oh,
Yeah, they said somebody called Pearl and said, and they don't know whether that's true or not.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know, but holy shit, if it is, if he was molested, he just wasn't,
Everyone that cared for him hurt him.
right, exactly. And then with Pearl, she had a habit. She had a horrible temper and would beat up on boyfriends, different boyfriends she would attack them. And then she ends up in this relationship with Asaro, and the family was happy because he didn't have a criminal record, and he had a steady job. And they thought, wow, Pearl found a winner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know how Pearl is. The thing that is wild in this case is how Sorrow, a guy with no criminal record, which again I know doesn't mean that he didn't do bad stuff, but he also had this reputation in his prior job, specifically working at an old folks home, of being incredibly patient, gentle, kind, and down to earth.
The owner of the home described him as a teddy bear.
Yeah.
From teddy
And
bear to demon.
right. So here's the thing. And I remember we were discussing, it's like, how does this happen? I'm like, well, maybe it is job. It's like, well, this is my job. I gotta like look good for the boss. But he went out of his way. He went out of his way for these old folks. And then you had brought up a good point, which is, well, they're elders. And, maybe he was taught to respect respect your elders and all that. But the to the point where your former boss and former like colleague comes to speak to your character at your sentencing trial for murdering an 8-year-old child.
I felt like she was doing that for the reputation of her business, honestly. I was like, oh, she's trying to protect herself from because she hired him.
Yeah, but he never did anything wrong
That's true.
at the job. Like, she really was like, the way she spoke, she goes, I have to believe that there was good in him at one point. I have to believe that there's still good in him somewhere.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people lost patience with her, but I got it. It's like, I can't imagine how bizarre it would be that someone and you trust them and you love them and you've watched them go out of their way to care for vulnerable people. In a profession where there are so many people that work in these places that abuse the elderly, that lose patience with the elderly, that are disgusted with the elderly, that this man would go out of his way to make sure that everyone gets to take the scenic route home from the beach so that they don't have to just be on the freeway. That he did these, he exhibited kindness.
Yeah.
And I saw her just like really trying to reconcile these two people, right? The person that she knew and the person that committed this massive fucking atrocity.
It so speaks to context. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like how does it happen that somebody can go from a teddy bear to a demon? Like,
Yeah.
we see it all the time. Like, we send people off to war, and when they go to war, they kill people and they sometimes torture people, and they come home and they don't do that. I think it's just really a matter, understanding this kind of phenomenon is like, understanding that like behavior, like how we are and how we show up is so context dependent. And there's so much about that particular situation, I think, with Gabriel that was reinforcing the abusive behaviors.
But here's the thing, though. It's like, so if you go off to war and you torture and you kill people, the context there is it's wartime, and you're constantly afraid of being blown up.
And you're taught that the enemy is not human.
You're taught to dehumanize the enemy, but also that the enemy is capable of destroying you. And like Gabriel was like 50 pounds and 7.5, 8 years old.
Yeah, so that's where I think, like, so what I was saying earlier when we first started the episode, when we were talking about psychological inflexibility.
Yeah.
I think that Isaro is like the poster child for psychological inflexibility. Like, people are capable in. So I do think he felt threatened by Gabriel, and it was a threat to his system of morality. Like he has this, it's sort of like, he learned homosexuality is bad.
Yeah, the homophobia piece is I think a big variable. It's a big thing in this.
Like if you look at how these behaviors like functioned instead of just like the like instead of the form and the topography of the behaviors, you start to see that, and we can just speculate. We don't really know for sure,
Yeah.
but they served Asaro in some way. We see that he has this history. I mean, in the family, there's homophobia in her family. So we can guess that somewhere along the line, he put it together in his mind that, you know, being gay is like bad, wrong, weak, whatever.
Right.
And so if Gabriel is gay, he's bad, wrong, weak. Maybe he saw himself as some kind of enforcer. More than that, I think probably what was going on with him is that the, so like his aggression, you could see how his aggression was fueled by the gayness. Like, there were reports from his Gabriel's brother that when he was beating him that last time, he was calling him gay.
Right.
So if you have this belief, right, and then he might have like seen himself in some kind of hierarchical relationship with Gabriel, like I'm strong, Gabriel's weak, or like an oppositional relationship, like I'm good, Gabriel's bad, I'm human, Gabriel's not human, all because of this belief about gayness. And, if we can't have any space, so like asserting control, dominating, right? I think we can see him doing that it might have threatened his, sense of his own masculinity or authority or his traditional views about gender roles and all that. And so abusing Gabriel could have served to sort of reinforce Isaro's identity and control within the family system. Like he might have felt like he needed to correct or punish that behavior because he deemed it so unacceptable. But a Pearl participating in it and encouraging it probably amplified the dynamic. And then they sort of create this like shared reinforcement loop where violence is like a normalized expression of authority between them. Like they're both doing it. They would laugh at him when he was screaming. They would, yeah. So, and also I think there was a function of regulating his emotions. Like I don't think Asaro could handle what came up in him around Gabriel. So rather than like be like, oh, like you did earlier, you're like, you know what? I'm having a panic attack. Let me just breathe. I need to go to the sun. He had like no capacity. He was completely fused with his thoughts. Being gay is bad. His feelings, his fear, frustration, contempt, whatever it was that was coming up, he could not handle. He had to like evacuate it basically and like make it go away by beating the shit out of Gabriel, is what it sort of feels like to me.
Yeah, he really also he had that kind of fixation on like, you see these pictures of him like flexing being a security guard. So it's that like hyper masculine fixation. And then I'm curious too about I'm not clear on Pearl's dynamic with Asaro. I mean, it was hyper sexualized. Like you would just see these gross pictures of them with their tongues in each other's mouth
Ew.
and then of course the weird sex talk, the jailhouse recording of them being in a nearby like cells close to each other and like talking, and then it turned to sex talk.
Yeah, it was like first they were talking about the abuse, right?
Yeah, she's like, she says something to the effect of like, well, what did you say to them? Did you say it was accidental? You said it was accidental. Meanwhile, Gabriel's fucking dead. And
Yeah,
she's just worried about like, well, what did you say? Like, so we don't get
right.
in trouble. And then it goes from that to her. It's so creepy. She's like, well, use your imagination. Remember when I was laying on the bed playing with myself and you were recording it?
Oh,
And I'm like,
definitely.
what? You're in jail and you're getting horny?
I think they probably had sex with him in that box. Like he was in the
Oh,
box and they were,
100% he was in the box hearing them
yeah, and definitely think there was a sexual element. I think it might have turned them on. I mean, they were
to beat
laughing.
him.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And that would be reinforcing too, right? Like, I look good in my girlfriend's eyes. I look strong. I mean, the guy dropped out of school after repeating 2 grades.
Yeah.
I can imagine he had like issues with self-esteem. She was kind of a hottie and he was kind of just this like lumpy dude. And
She was incredibly controlling. I mean, if she is beating up boyfriends,
yeah.
and I think that there was some. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to. I can't verify it. I saw it somewhere that she used to attack him as well. Um, and so yeah, we talked about like the possibility of this being like a folie à deux in a way, or a version of like a folie à deux situation. Like, had Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo never met, the Barbie and Ken killers, maybe Carla would have never murdered, right?
Yes, I mean
Um,
that whole thing of like, it's just become like the girls who became friends and they killed the other girl's mom. What I forgot their names.
oh yeah, it was yeah, Anne Per well, her Juliet Hume and um Hume, whose author name is Anne Perry. She went on to become a successful mystery writer. And her childhood best friend, Pauline Reaper. How the fuck did I remember? But yeah, they were so obsessed with each other, and yeah, they did their time. I mean, they were both juveniles, and they went on to live perfectly normal lives after that. Same with Carla Homolka, got married and changed her name and is a parent and living somewhere. I have no idea what her deal is.
This is why I love like, because I don't the lens that we a lot that's very popular to look through is like, it's a mystery for people to try and make sense of why a person is capable of both love and this kind of abuse. But I would submit, like, depending on the context we're in and depending on our level of flexibility psychologically and how we can like respond to difficult internal and external events, it makes perfect sense to me. It's like we are capable of some pretty awful things if, when we are stressed, when we are trying to survive, we've all seen The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Like, it's a constantly shifting situation in our lives with context. Like, I'm fine with, like, I leave you messages and I'm like da, da, talking and laughing, and then all of a sudden someone cuts me off and I'm like murderous.
Yeah.
But I have some self-control. But some people
Yeah.
don't. And I think that's ultimately it, is like the levers. They just don't know how to work the levers. They haven't had training, and different people have different capacity to respond, like you did this morning. Like, you're responding to these things that are going on inside of you. That came from learning and practice. And like, some people, and we definitely all have our range, like, can I do this well and how well? But like, they just had none of those skills. Like, they were just running around responding to internal and external events, like with reaction, just reacting, and with aggression. And it's just sad because all that stuff, I think, is totally preventable if we actually just had training like built into schools. People could be trained from a very early age to develop more flexibility, and so you wouldn't have to be a victim of their lives and their feelings and thoughts. And does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and then the folie à deux thing is like really interesting because it just becomes another context. Like, you have this intense relationship, the new norms get kind of established, like there's reinforcement around it, like Paul Bernardo and what's her face, right?
Carla
Yeah.
Homolka. Yeah.
Like, that was mutually reinforcing because like he was getting off on the stuff she was doing and she was wanting his love and attention, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's wild though to see that sort of range, that she could go and have kids and become a teacher, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I really emphasizing like the folie, which is crazy. You know, the definition, I believe, is crazy to crazy to pair, like the crazy
Madness.
is the thing. You go mad. And with Asaro, and what really stands out to me, that there were some people, pointing out that Asaro just didn't show, like the jury, some of the jury were like, they would like kind of peek over at him during the trial, and he is just staring blankly straight ahead, and they're looking for some remorse or a tear and all that, and they take his blank stare as remorselessness, right? I didn't see it that way. I have no idea if he has any remorse, and we never hear from him. We never hear from him.
Yeah.
We have no idea. But the blankness, I think, is the deadness inside. Is the can't even compute, won't compute, like the dissociation. I think it's clear to him his life is over. And
Yeah.
then during not is it yeah, during sentencing, when Pearl comes out looking like a fucking bridge troll, just really terrifying. Like, she's scary. Like, dude, if I woke up in the middle of the night and she was like looking at me, I would probably die of a heart attack. I just like, or I, again, like the one thing I can say for Stephanie Rodriguez, the social worker, is like how terrifying it must have been when Pearl fucking answered the door.
Oh my God. I will
She is
say,
terrifying looking.
no, that is totally my, like, so I'm pissed. So I'm sounding very blamey right now, and I'm blaming
Right.
these social workers. But ultimately I'm like, I understand when you're she should have never been given that case, in my opinion. She was a new social worker. That is a very complex case. She didn't have enough help. But like, I've been terrified too when I've had to make reports. I'm like, somehow it's gonna get back to them that I did this, and they're gonna come after me. Or my report will make it worse for the kid because CPS won't do anything about it, and then they'll know someone's onto them, and then the kid will get a worse beating.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, she's absolutely horrifying. And it's so funny how like you can look a certain way and you can be like the nicest person in the world, but like you look like a real mean person. But she does. I mean, it's her physiology, or it's so dead on. Like,
No,
you know,
she has this resting, aggressive look.
yeah,
And even at the sentencing trial,
yeah, like
when
hate.
she comes out and she's sitting like at the same table, but like down at the end, Isaro never turns and looks at her. He looks straight ahead.
I
He
know.
doesn't register. There is no like kind of, he's like a lump. Like, he's just sitting there staring straight ahead. And she is mugging. She's looking around. She doesn't give a fuck about anything. She is looking around. She's looking at him. She's like, listening to the impact statements, decides she's going to fucking say something, which is ridiculous. It's like, I'm so sorry to my family. I'm
Even her
sorry to my
voice
family.
sounds disembodied, right? It's like,
Yeah.
right? It's all,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's just, oof.
Yeah, like she it doesn't ring true, of course. It's like a pat kind of thing, and it's crazy. I wouldn't have the balls to speak after doing that to a child. I would be like a sorrow, probably staring straight ahead, like, I fucked up so bad. These people hate me. I did this. Not at all. Like, you really see with Pearl with that. But it's interesting, the contrast between Pearl's demeanor in at the sentencing trial, and Asaro, who just doesn't move, doesn't. I'm not even
Yeah,
sure if he blinked, but it's.
yeah,
I think he understands what he did and what she
definitely.
did.
Well, because
I don't think she does, but I think he does.
yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because when you're in the heat of the moment, so it's like fight or flight, right? So you're in the heat of the moment, and this is by design. Like, if you're an early human on the savannah and a saber-toothed tiger comes after you, your behavioral repertoire does not expand. It narrows, right? It's like
Right.
you're focused on getting the hell out of there or fighting or playing dead or whatever. You just do it. And I think that's actually I think that's the degree to which his anger had control of him.
Yeah.
And his, that he literally had no space. He just went into like attack mode. And and I think probably after the fact, when he's not staring at a little kid he thinks is gay, who thinks he needs to like punish, he probably has none of those urges, right?
No.
And
I
it's yeah.
Yeah, no, and also I believe that he heard like his former employer and colleague like on the stand perplexed
Uh-huh.
at what he once was. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think Asaro, first of all, he's where he needs to be,
Yes.
right? He what he did was I can't even I can't. All of that and his homophobia, like fuck you.
Right. Like, come on. But this speaks to the power of like language
Yeah.
and human suffering. Like these symbolic minds, the minds that can put together these like very rigid rules, and we feel like we have to either enforce or that it's yeah. Like that, I mean, wars are fought over these kinds of ideas. And it's just, yeah, it's so dysfunctional and awful, but like reinforced within his relationship, within his family, within his, peer group, probably, that it's like the folie of Dieu, but like a bigger number of people. It's like in his world, that was the norm to, you know, have hatred for people who are different and different sexual orientations.
And then it's a I mean even though it's playing into that folie à deux is almost like they're not a pack but they're a pair, but that
Yeah.
pack mentality
Yeah.
of just and then the arousal of when you're beating someone and you keep going and you don't stop and you don't hear stop. It's why in fights you have refs, like
Yes.
watching a UFC and someone is has mounted somebody and they're just pounding on their face and they don't stop. They don't see that the person is actually unconscious. That is why the ref is there, because
Yes.
when you get going you're not thinking. And so for
Yes.
Asaro, when he's like in the throes of this and couple that with Pearl's encouragement, he's just going. But my hope is that when he heard like his former employer and these colleagues like speaking to a way that he once was, he's seeing the contrast. He's seeing number one what he lost in any humanity that he had.
Yeah.
That the person that did care for these vulnerable elderly people, that cared enough to go out of his way to give them like a really nice scenic route back home so that they could take that with them.
Yeah.
That fucking thoughtfulness that once existed. And I bet you in prison he's sitting there and he's like, what did I fucking become?
Yes.
Like I think he has remorse. I think he does. I don't think Pearl does, because I think she probably always was a monster, you know? I mean, again, she did go through some shit, and maybe that's what caused her to become that. I mean, we don't know if she had like, was born like an asshole, and then
I'm so glad
had
she's behind bars, because if she wasn't, she might come after us.
yeah, right. No, she would be a reoffender.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and Asaro, obviously, this is a guy that whether it was because he was madly in love with Pearl and wanted to make her happy or not, like this is a guy who clearly can't think for himself,
He has no brake system when he gets
and he
like,
has no brakes. Like he is dangerous.
Yeah.
He obviously like they both are, but I guess we've kind of covered this.
Yeah. Do you want me to? I have one thing to say. This is
And I do too. I'll let you go first, but I kind of want to close out with something too.
Oh, good. Okay. So when I was listening to the case over the week, just sort of absorbing everything again, I just thought about in Buddhism, if we're always thinking, you and I, about your faith journey and my work and like our practices, our individual practices, and just humanity in general. Like how do we? I always think about like what constructive thing can we do? How can we make things, improve things, for people and help people. And I was thinking, in Buddhism, there's this idea of the kleshas. There's like 3 poisons: greed, aggression, and ignorance. And they're like, in Buddhism, they're like considered the cause of all of our suffering, and sort of like the principal obstacles on our path to like liberation. And I was thinking, this case is just, you can look at this case and see how ignorance, greed, and aggression led to this tragedy, basically. And unless you can work with this stuff as a human, you're vulnerable to harming people, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, just had to say that little piece.
No, and that actually leads me to, Pastor Jim today. He brought up, the story that Jesus tells of, the Good Samaritan, and this person just laying, beaten and bloodied on the side of the road after being robbed, and how these people in positions of authority, a priest, all that, they pass by and like cross the street to get away from the man that's laying there, bloody, and they cross around, and then it's this guy comes up, and he's like, this man needs help. I have to help him. Like, I have to help him, and takes him to an inn, and cleans him up, and he's not anybody. This guy that helped out the dude, he's not anybody. But it's interesting because it brings to mind, there's in the Bible, I'm paraphrasing, in Matthew, Jesus essentially says, whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me. And it made me think a little bit, because Gabriel, the name Gabriel is there's the archangel Gabriel, and you think about how he was this little guy, who had no protections, and he asked for help, and no one helped him. And some people tried, but no one actually succeeded in helping him. And it's interesting because there is this belief that sometimes angels come down, and they are the man dying on the side of the road, or someone who desperately needs help. And it's just interesting because he's he has a very prominent angel's name, and he was the least of these. And so I guess I think about that. It's just a reminder, when someone needs help, help them.
Yeah, and in his death, he is helping. The system has been looked at, things have changed. And it's not perfect, but right, if someone needs help, help them. Honestly, wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a landmark case, and it will never be forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you see something, I mean, you hear it all the time, when you see something, report it and follow up.
Report it and follow up, and don't be afraid to be a naggy butthole about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to push and take care of yourself, but try to have
And
courage.
cite this case.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing too, is like keep Gabriel's name with you, because if anybody's giving you the runaround, well, listen, we're doing our job. Really? There's this case. Maybe
Right.
you've heard of it. And that kid was failed when he shouldn't have been failed. Like the system failed him. I don't trust the system. Sorry, no offense to you or your job, but I need follow through.
100%. And honestly, know that it's a giant bureaucracy. Know what you're dealing, like, I think just fear. We're a species. We're like the only species that we know of that can be stopped from doing something really important by a thought. And just don't be that person. Like, oh, it won't go anywhere. Nobody will follow up on it anyway. They might find out who I am. Don't let that stop you from protecting your fellow humans, especially children and animals.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my
I
when it
love
comes to
that.
animals and children and the elderly, like the people that just that
Need us the
because
most.
there but for the grace of God go any of us,
Hmm.
right? Just being vulnerable, or like when we were children, you think of our own children or friends' children, just
Oh, if somebody, I kept thinking about my nephew during this, and I thought, if somebody was doing that to him, I would lose my mind. Like, I can't even imagine. It's so painful to imagine, the fear on his face. And, the other part, too, I know we have to end, but the other part that really got to me was that Gabriel continued to love her
yeah.
through this whole thing. It reminded me of this quote. It's like one of my favorite quotes, like that sort of explains how kids can stay attached to an abusive parent. It's by Fairbairn, who's a psychiatrist. He said, "It's better to be a sinner in a world ruled by God than to live in a world ruled by the devil." So kids learn to think of themselves as bad because if you're bad, if you're the bad one, then you have some control. If you can actually fix it and try to make it better if it's you that's the problem. But
Right.
imagine what it's like the other way around, to be a kid living under Gabriel's circumstances and having somebody say to you like, "Okay, kid, all you got is like 10 more years. Then you can kind of be free of eating cat litter." It's like
Yeah.
unbearable. So kids tend to make themselves the bad one and stay connected to the parent out of survival, really. And,
Oh, there was this at the twins soccer game yesterday. There were these two little boys, and one of them was a toddler, and the other one was probably about 7, and just kept coming over and giggling and smiling. He had little dimples and just so innocent. And you think about that, and you think about anyone wanting to destroy that,
I know.
and I can't comprehend. And it's this week I've been praying for Pearl and Asaro. You and I have been talking a lot about the like forgiveness, and how forgiveness isn't passive. It's active, and it's something you have to work on. You don't
Mm-hmm.
just go, well, okay, well, I forgive this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the praying. So I'm not out there trying to forgive Pearl and Asaro. I don't think but I pray for them.
Mm-hmm.
I pray for a recognition of what they did, and I pray that they are seeking, that they're seeking redemption.
Yeah, and I hope,
But
like, the fact that they had a consequence, I hope that like sets off some kind of growth and healing for them.
well, we know that Pearl has been getting the shit kicked out of her in prison, like bad.
Wow. I can imagine. I mean, I can imagine. We all know what it's like to be vulnerable and have someone, well, not all of us maybe. Okay, this leads me to we should stop, but like this leads me to the juror. Did you remember the juror in the movie who was like, I was not abused as a child. I don't know anybody who was abused as a child.
Oh, the dude that was like they're
Oh, that
fucking
guy. Oh, the
whatever.
hung jury guy. I was like, don't you do it, guy.
OMG. It
I was
makes me
like, you
wonder
dead.
if in the jury room, I wonder if they were like fucking holding him down and like poking him, and they're like, you know what you have to fucking do. No, he was so like, he's like,
Ugh.
well, I mean, I
It's
don't know. I feel like Pearl was the one who like, that thing that he was saying about Pearl versus Asaro or whatever.
Oh, I know. I was like, I'll take misogyny for 1,000.
Right, exactly. It was her fault.
Yeah, he has no autonomy. No,
Right.
he wasn't, but no, the girl who I thought was so cool, so interesting, because I always think about my trauma history and how it does actually cause problems for me. I think sometimes in assessing, sort of like responding in the appropriate way to like these kinds of things. Because it's like a desensitization or something. But
Right.
and I think the social workers probably had it too. But the woman who had not had any abuse, none of her friends had had any abuse. She was the most clear. She was the young one. And she
Right.
was like, "Oh yeah, he's getting the death penalty." Like,
Yeah.
and she was so clear. And I really love when I see that kind of moral clarity in people,
Yeah.
because I'm always so like, oh, bogged down by complexity. Like I hardly ever can be like, But anyway, all right, I digress. Shall we?
Yep. Thanks for holding on. Thanks for sticking with us through this rough episode. We'd love to know your thoughts as well. You can always shoot us an email.
We are at secretpassagepodcast@gmail.com. And you could also leave us a message or a note on social media, on Instagram or X. Instagram, Secret Passage Podcast. And then Secret Pass Pod on X.
Secret Pass Pod. Yeah. Awesome, guys. We'll see you next week.
See